And hello, Facebook. We're live here from Wargaming Europe. I'm Mr. Conway, Community Coordinator, and with me here is...
Zoltan. I am also called Felon. I am the Community Manager.
Excellent. So we've got a really cool stream planned for you guys today. We're going to be talking with two of our developers about some really interesting topics. We're going to be covering Tier 10 light tanks. We're going to be talking about the results from the Sandbox tests that you guys have surely seen us run. We're going to talk about the German heavy tanks that we reworked. We're going to talk about improvements to the Matchmaker, graphical improvements, and even a new game mode. So it's going to be a very exciting stream. If you haven't yet, push that like button, push that share button, get your friends in. And yeah, I think this is going to be a cool ride. We've got lots of stuff to show you that is definitely going to be exciting.
Yeah, and we will be joined by two special guests from San Francisco, the GDC 2017. Actually, they are on site. And they are Thane, our World of Tanks product director. Hey there.
Hey guys. Oh, we're on.
Yes, you're live.
So I just introduced Thane. Say hi to the stream.
Hey everybody.
And the other cool person over there is Milos, the World of Tanks development director.
Hey guys, good to be here.
So can you guys maybe tell us something about what you do? What do you do with World of Tanks?
Sure. Yeah. So for me, as product director, what that means, it's like a head of product role. So anything that's World of Tanks, whatever function or capacity or whatever, I'm kind of the last stop on the train.
Okay. So Milos, what about you?
Hey everyone. I'm development director. So I'm directly in Minsk, working with a team on all the new excited stuff you can see. So everything that's touching the developers is going through us, and we are saying hello.
Awesome.
Excellent. Well, I think we should just get stuck in right to the questions. So the first thing I think people really want to talk about is what we introduced in update 9.17.1. If you don't know, we updated our German heavy tank lines. We added a couple of new ones. We reshuffled a bit of other things. So the question is, why did we add more German heavy tanks when we have other nations that are still missing tank branches? Why did we go for Germany?
Sure. Well, so I'd start with just why we're doing these sort of redos on certain lines anyway, right? Just to start with. The German line, that one in particular, it's been around for quite a long time, right? One of the first things in, and there's been a lot of changes that have happened around that, right, in other areas, other facets of the game, and so it's needed a little bit of love, right, a little bit of maintenance to kind of bring it up to speed with what's going on elsewhere in the game. The other thing is, when you look, we're trying to get better about having really consistent lines, right? Some of the lines we do this really well, and then some of the lines we don't, right? Where what you want ideally is from sort of tier 2 all the way through up to 10, you've got a relatively consistent play experience. So as you're moving up the tiers, you're getting better and better at that thing, and you're getting a better and better tank, but it plays pretty similarly. We didn't really have that, in the previous version, especially with that line in particular, right? So we tried to make some changes to be able to have a more consistent play experience, something that you can reliably grow with as you're playing and gaining more experience in the tree. You want to talk about some of the details inside of that?
Sure thing. German line, if you think about it, it's one of the oldest lines in the game, and with that, it's pretty skill-based line. There are lots of cool tanks to get to your hands, but as we are going forward, you can see that like the other lines coming in, they are changing a little bit of the stuff, stats, and changing the gameplay a little. And the German line was untouched for a while. That's when you can actually see that in the last patches, we were looking into these oldest parts and trying to buff it a little. And as Thane said, for us, it's really important to actually get a consistency into the lines. So if you take a look what we have done, for example, with the mouse, I really like the changes when previously the VK was sort of, a bit sidelining, and then the mouse came, like, the mighty mouse. What we wanted to have is the player will actually sort of get ready for the gameplay of the beauty, exactly, and bring a little bit of the style. That's why the VK 100 and the motion are actually coming to the play. Then we were actually looking into the VK line, and there was a lot of potential. It's interesting gameplay, a lot of side scripting, really interesting peekaboo moments in some ways. So that's why we actually looked into that and introduced the new heavy line based on the VK. As everyone knows, we were looking into the Panzer 7, basically really similar to the really popular clan tank VK-72. We reworked it a little, and we gave it a different gun. So now the gameplay, now the VK-72 is more of the like close by, like big boom from close range. The Panzer 7 is a bit more of the mid-range tank that shouldn't go so close at the beginning of the battle, and maybe actually support from the behind, and then actually start pushing with the rest of the tanks. So I think that was a really cool thing. At the same time, the heavy tanks were actually not the only ones we were actually doing. There was lots of love to given to other tanks, a bit of rebalancing on Grille. Everyone was talking about it. Was a really hot topic. And at the same time, we looked into some of the medium tanks and the premium tanks, and was actually continuing quite naturally from the 917 patch when we actually did the first touches with Leve, my first premium tank in the game. So
many people's first premium tank.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah, and look, the other thing, right, obviously, is that the German line itself is just, I mean, it is one of the most popular, not just on the European server. It is just one of the most popular lines overall, right? One of the most popular nations in the game, and the mouse is just, it's such a signature tank, right? Like, we've got to get the experience going all the way up to the mouse to be really, really right, because it's one of those, the minute that players, even at sort of young levels, right, at low tiers, start to learn about what that is, it immediately becomes an attractive destination, right? So we want to make sure that everything on the way there feels really good.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, you already touched a little bit on the tank rebalancing we did in 917.1. Can you tell us a little bit about what we're looking at next in terms of rebalancing? Because I think there's still a couple of vehicles here and there that probably need a bit of love.
So it turns out inside of the 450 plus tanks, there's a here and there's one or two things we might do. The treatment that we're giving to to this line, the way that you see that, right, I think is indicative of the kinds of things that you'll see going forward, right? Again, trying to make sure that we've got consistency, that that when you play it, you've got a relatively reliable experience. And so when you go from, tier 3 to 4 to 5, you're growing and gaining, some kind of expertise in a particular play style. I think we want to get better also at making sure that from the earliest time, you know what that play style is, get better at sort of advertising to you exactly what that means. And I don't mean, marketing, advertising. I just mean in the game, explaining it, right, for players, so you know what you're getting into, right, when you step into one of those tanks. That's a big part of it. I think, of course, you'd expect that we're going to hit, the ones that need the most love, sure, but also the ones that are the most popular in the community, right? The ones that have the most play are going to be ones where we, tend to focus our time and effort, right? Because those are the ones where it will make the biggest difference to the biggest number of players. And that's a perpetual project, right? We'll just keep going. And
you can see that actually last year we basically started with the first touches with the oldest of the oldest tanks, and I think this is something that will continue throughout the year, and we will be touching more and more trees with the focus, of course, based on the popularity and based on the tanks that actually needs it the most.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So we are talking about rebalancing tanks, right? So, and we know that there is going to be a big change coming for light tanks. So can you guys maybe explain what's coming and what's behind that? What's the reasoning behind that?
Sure. Yeah. So the light tanks and the Matchmaker, which I know is something everybody wants to talk about too, and we'll talk about that too. These kind of go hand in hand. When you look at light tanks, I think they were a fairly unique class. In some ways, they were sort of the little brother when you get to the high tier experience, right? They only go to tier 8. They have this scout-based matchmaking thing that, technically the tier 7 lights for their scouting prowess can play. They can hang in, in that higher tier battle. But, it's not the most exciting experience to be told like, hey, you're a tier 7. Yeah, go hang in a bush, dude. Maybe, you kind of pat them on the head, go, hey, can you light up some stuff so the big boys can do their job? That's not the most exciting experience in a game, right? And it's frustrating for players because, like, why am I 3 tiers under? It's just not good, right? So what we're moving to, right, as part of the matchmaker changes, right, the light tanks will go all the way to tier 10, and they'll be able to function just as light tanks do in the medium tiers and lower tiers, right? They'll have their purpose and their use. That's kind of the biggest stuff, right? Making sure that they're full class citizens and eliminating this sort of the weirdness of scout-based matchmaker, which tends to be frustrating for players and especially very confusing for newer players about how that works. You want to, Miloš, maybe dig into some of the details around the, the feel and the role? And
Sure thing. So if you take a look on the tier 9 and 10 LTs, they are basically natural continuous of the tier 8 gameplay, pretty fast, pretty mobile, a bit smaller tanks, non-existing armor, they are fairly, made from paper, driving like crazy over the battlefield, quite good values for actually hiding. So they can basically help the other tanks a bit more of a support class than anything else. Of course, with the upper tiers, we are bumping up the guns. Not so it's actually affecting the medium tiers, but still, like the guns are having pretty good stabilization. So you can, roll around the tanks, play a little bit with the mouse players. But at the same time, you are not the best sniper because that's not your role. Your role should be actually a bit more either up close, rotating, or actually lighting up other stuff. The speed is important. We are trying to balance the combination of mobility together with maneuverability. Because to be fair, there are certain limits that if we actually go over, it might actually be really unpleasant to drive, and that actually the controllability of the tanks could go quite haywire. So we are actually balancing the tanks in this area and making sure that they are actually keeping still the space for the medium tanks and for the heavies, of course, because the role there is actually different. But yeah, I would say these are the basics.
Yeah. In the hands of a really good player, right? The light tank, it's sort of, their job is to kind of harass, right? You're sort of sitting, waiting for that opportunity, and then especially when things have thinned out a little bit, right? They go punching through. Right, diving into the backfield and and just causing all sorts of mayhem, right, at the opponent's back line, and so like Miloš said, right, you got to be fast, you got to be mobile, you got to keep on the move, you got to have a gun that's going to be stable because if you sit, if you're going to sit and wait for that aim circle to up all the way down, it's probably not going to work out very well for you, so very much like the kind of the stinging hornet,
Exactly.
Zipping around.
Yeah, I'm a big light tank driver myself, and I'm looking forward to it. So, guys, you've already seen. I've actually up there. I've put the tier 10 light tanks and a little bit of a rotation, just showing off some screenshots because they are actually quite pretty. But how do you guys think this change will it affect the overall sort of gameplay meta that we have right now for the other classes?
So that's actually something we are being really careful with, and we are really closely monitoring. And as you know, we are actually on a Sandbox right now as we speak, actually testing the combination of the RT prototype together with the LTs. There was a lot of questions. Why are we actually limiting the usage of them, and why are we actually doing the missions on the Sandbox? Well, the reason is exactly that. Like, we do not want to only take a look at, like, hey, are the LTs good? But we would like to check out the other classes and how they are actually affected. Of course, the LTs, higher you are going, they need to have its own specifics. And as I said, like, we cannot just bump the speed completely up to the roof, and the same as visibility. Yeah. So they might be going a little bit closer to the mediums, but we want to be really careful with making sure that all the other tank types are having their space, and that the LTs are actually not affecting the playability, especially on the medium side, too much. Because I would say, like, LTs are never going to play heavy. On the other hand, the mediums could be affected by the gameplay. So yeah, we are pretty careful, and there will be more and more testing on our side just to ensure that this is not happening.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the Sandbox, right? I mean, the real purpose behind it is to be able to make these kind of really aggressive changes in a test environment where we're still not, like super test or common test where we're like, oh, great, we're about a month out, and then it's too late to really make any changes, right? This allows us to really do stuff, push the envelope, and then dial it back, right? If we go, okay, we're too far, we can pull it back from there. And, with more predictability, right? So that by the time we actually ship whatever it is that we've got, by the time we launch that out, we can feel good about the fact that the playability is going to be there, that the community is going to feel good about it, because we've already seen that, right? We've had the audience reaction, and we've taken on board the players' feedback before it's gone out, right? Had a chance to have them really be, have some ownership in the process.
Yeah, cool. Now, actually, I think we have some more material prepared. Just apart from these screenshots, we have an interview with Andre, I think it is, prepared. So let's just put that up, and we will be back with you guys in just a minute. Enjoy.
Perfect.
Hey guys, my name is Andrei Bilecki. I'm lead creative producer for World of Tanks PC. I am a sort of recent addition to the team. I joined the project somewhere 2016, so a little bit than half a year ago. I want to tell you today about what we are going to do with light tanks, why we are moving them or spreading them up to tier 10, and what we want to achieve with that, and some small details on what tanks are going to be available soon. Firstly, we want to keep the main core strength of the class. It's being maneuverable, being fast, and being stealthy or invisible. So these three will remain. Secondly, we want to increase their firepower and general combat ability by giving them more HP, higher alpha damage, more potent guns, to make them really able to stand their own ground. Maybe not versus every potential opponent, but at least not feel themselves underpowered anymore. Thirdly, they are supposed to be Rackons and eyes of the team as they were before. So they will retain their powerful stealth bonus. They will have as high view range as medium tanks tier 10 or higher. As an example, we can take new Soviet tier 10 light tank. This is logical continuation of your favorite T-52. It will become faster, it will become more durable, it will get a better gun with better depression that will allow to deal considerable and notable damage to any opponent on tier 10. We want to make this one fearsome opponent in case he is matched at tier 8 battle, just like any tier 10 would be. Now I'm looking forward for new light tanks, as I'm playing a lot of battles on my tier 10s. I believe that new light tanks will become competitive, and I will blow the dust off from my light tanks in the garage and back to them again. So cheers, I really want you all to see and experience what we are readying for you, and these new tanks are going to be available soon. Thank you, bye-bye.
Yep.
And we are back.
We have seen a lot of cool videos. We have talked about light tanks. So now the question is, when can we expect them to see in the game? You guys talk about.
Yeah. So the age-old question. Hey, that's really cool. When's it coming?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'd say we aren't calling a specific date on it yet, but our next big patch, you should be able to see these things out there.
Okay.
Okay, excellent.
Sounds good.
Now, we actually went on the forums just before we came to talk to you guys and asked people what their questions were. So we've got a couple of questions from the players on these things we talked about. So the first question is, how are they going to be different from medium tanks, these new light tanks? I think you touched upon it a little bit, but some players, I think, are confused why we really need them, because a top tier medium tank already has a speed and has view range. So why do we need a tier 10 light tank?
For sure. So if you take a look on the LTs, what we are doing right now, the guns are going a little bit up, so it might feel like, but if you take a look on the soft stats of the guns, they are not the super lasery guns like with Leopard. The penetration is not exactly there. The stabilization overall is pretty decent, so you can actually really easily rotate around the tanks. The tanks needs to be small, no armor. So it's not like if you'll be actually driving in Object 140 with nearly unpenetrable turret. So the tanks actually cannot withstand one-to-one shootout over further distance. That's impossible for them. They need to stay in a move. They are pretty small, so they can actually hide in a bush and wait for the perfect moment to actually come, rotate a few times, and just get him down. So they are more of a finishers type of a tanks than actually early fighters. The visibility will be a little bit better. So not too much, but at the same time they will have exactly. So they will have the exact little bit of more possibility to actually do the scouting, and they shouldn't be snipers. They should be really the close range combatants. So I would say that makes them a little bit different compared to, for example, the German medium line or even the Russian line. There is a huge difference.
Yeah, the mediums are always going to be your most versatile, right? Like the role of a medium is to be kind of a little good at everything. Sort of a jack of all trades, right? They're they are by virtue of being medium, right? They're if they're next to a light, they look heavy. If they're next to a heavy, they look light. And so they have a lot of versatility. The lights are more of a purpose-built thing, right? Much like heavies, like they have an absolutism about them, right? Their role is exactly this, and exactly as Milos is saying, it's just take all of those things that a medium kind of has, and then pull them further, right? So if it's a little bit weak here, it's super, super weak on the armor. If it's a little bit better on the visibility, it's speed, faster. So it's really a function of what it is you want to do, right? If you want to really cater to a specific role, the new lights are going to be the way you want to go. If you want to have the ability to have something cool to do on the battlefield kind of in any situation, but never be that super hyper specialist, that's where the mediums live.
So I have one very specific question about one specific tank, because I have received a lot of personal messages, forum messages, everything basically about the ELC, so the tier 5 range tank. So can you maybe talk about the changes there and why we changed that tank? Because a lot of people love that little tank.
Me included.
Me included.
We are still looking into what exactly to do with the ELC. We know that people love that. It's actually personally one of the most favorable tanks to play, even for me on the LT side. It's a lot of fun.
Yep.
It can be a bit of a punisher. So we will definitely spend some quality time and make sure that the tank is where it should be, and that we will not actually make mad any of the players of this little French beast.
Yep.
Awesome.
Okay, a lot of players were also interested about where we got the information about the newly introduced German heavy tanks. So where did we get the blueprints, and how did we go about turning them into models?
Oh boy.
So there is a lots of research going on our side. We have its own separate team of historical research guys who are literally flying around the world, digging out all the possible materials, and they are working always ahead of time. So they have always lots of papers on their table, going through that, looking into what will be the next thing coming into the game, and they are sort of the engineers behind what should happen with the tanks from the perspective of the history. So these guys are actually going through all the museums. They are visiting. They have really good contacts on the historical guys all over the place, and they are digging out all the possible information about what could actually happen.
Yep.
So to be fair, we had a lot of the blueprints already a few years ago, and just now came the right time to actually take these out.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes in both directions, right? The historians sometimes say, boy, we really want to this line is underserved, right? This particular nation doesn't have enough. Can you go find detail about this or this or this? And they go find it, right? And then other times, as Milos was saying, they're constantly sort of scouring the earth for anything. And then if they find something, right, that's this sort of this buried treasure, right, this trove of information, then they bring it in and say, oh, guys, you got to see this. This is really cool. Now, it's with a Russian accent frequently rather than my American. But, the same approach is there, right? And so it's this really interesting synergy between traditional development, right? Usually in game development, you just go, hey, listen, I want a thing. I need a thing, whatever this thing is, right, for my game. And so you turn that task over to the designers, right? But in this one, because there's a real world component to it, that, you know, sometimes it goes the other direction as well.
Okay, next question is a bit special because it comes from us, because we wanted to throw you guys, you know, because we kind of have to take this opportunity. So you just added these really cool new German tanks to the game. So could you please try to pronounce the names for us, you know, the full name? And I'm going to help you. I can just give you the name and I'll probably butcher it as well, just to make even more fun, okay? The first one is the Mäuschen.
Oh God, yeah, my Austrian mother and grandparents will be rolling over if I mispronounce this. Mäuschen, I believe.
That was pretty decent.
It's a good effort, yeah. Okay. The next one is a bit more tricky, I would say. Panzerkampfwagen 7.
This is all you.
Okay, 11 year of German. Okay, Panzerkampfwagen 7.
Nice. Pretty nice. Okay. Okay, let's up it a bit. Okay, so Versuchskraftfahrzeug 101P.
It's the VK101P if you're
So Versuchskraftfahrzeug
Versuchskraftfahrzeug,
yeah.
101P.
101.
In Spain.
Pretty cool. Let's say we can.
Germans have a particular sadistic pleasure in making names particularly long and hard to pronounce.
We had to do that, right?
Yes.
No, I enjoy German. It's the language where you take one word and then you add another word to it and another word and and then you have a whole sentence and it's a word.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really useful.
I still love my Schmetterling, you know.
Oh, nice. So let's go for an actual serious question. So we are talking about premium tanks this time. So do we plan any more buffs to older premium tanks in the future?
Yeah, I certainly, you know, I mean, look, you know, Slava and the guys on the balance side, you know, they're always very careful about Slava, our creative director, right? Trying to make sure that that you know, all the tanks need to be satisfying, fun, interesting to play, have their purpose, right? But especially, you know, with some of these older premiums, just this, you know, this other stats, the other things that have happened or changes that have been made to the game, you know, make them not really function maybe the way that they did when the game first came out, right? Or other things have come in and they've sort of kept doing what they're doing, and then the world's passed them by. We don't want to be in a position where any tank is dissatisfying to play, and certainly especially not one where you've gone to the trouble of paying for it, right? So, you know, I think we've hit what we view as the worst case offenders, right?
I think so, yeah.
The ones that really needed it, right? And then, you know, as we continue, and obviously as we can do things like change lights, change SPGs, you know, that will again continue to change in some way, whether slightly or dramatically, you know, the balance of the game over time, and we'll continue to make changes to those so that they can be, you know, competitive and cool and fun to play and have a purpose, right, inside of the game at that moment.
Okay, I think the next question touches a bit more on that. We used to have this formula for premium tanks that we make them slightly worse than a comparable tech tree counterpart, but instead we gave them limited matchmaking. So why did we decide to change this formula and go in a different direction?
So, you know, that was an interesting conversation. One of the first things when I came onto the project, right, I had these really long, like late night conversations with Slava and then with Serb, you know, Sergei Berkatowski, right? And, you know, I was asking him all these kind of questions about like, okay, how do we do this? Why do we do that? What do we do here? And then I came on this one, right? This whole like, hey, I've heard that we try to make sure that the premium tanks are kind of shitty. Like, what is going? And Serb got this horrible, like, oh, you know, look on his face. It was like, no. Like, it's like, it was as though there was a good idea that had been taken sort of down a bad road. You know, people had misunderstood what he was trying to go for there. The idea wasn't to make premiums worse than your average thing. It was to make them not better, right? So the idea is you can't pay to win. You're not paying for power, right? What you should be paying for is interest, right? Something that's unique, something that's cool, whether it's just that it looks really good or it's a rare historical thing that has significance to a player, or it's something that plays just a little bit differently than you can get somewhere else, right? Obviously, you know, with premiums, you know, you get the, you know, there's the credit and XP benefit and all that, the crew training and all that. so the idea wasn't that they should be worse, right? It's just that they shouldn't be better, and then you're screwing the guys who aren't paying you a bunch of money, right? So it's a not pay for power thing. And it's just that really good idea, that really noble goal then got a little bit perverted. And so, we're going back to what the original intent was by doing it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's a fair question, a fair answer, I think. So let's go to a different topic, a really hot topic, which is the matchmaker. Yeah. So at Wargaming Fest, you guys already mentioned that there is going to be some changes to the matchmaker. So can you maybe share some news about this?
We're just leaving it as it was, right?
Yeah,
no issues, really. Yeah.
We also never receive complaints about matchmaking.
No, totally.
Never heard of it. Like, what is exactly the issue?
Yeah. So look, in honesty, before I get filleted by the Facebook Live community, look, clearly, like the matchmaker absolutely has huge problems. We know it, right? And it's part of, what I've called the unholy trinity, right? I mean, when you look at the top 3 things people complain about, right? It's maps, matchmaker, and SPGs. Now, the good news is, right, if you look at our plans for what we're doing this year, all 3 of those, after years and years and years of them not being things people are dealing with, those are on our hit list. And even today, right, we're going to talk about, we'll talk about Matchmaker now. We're going to talk about maps. We'll talk about the SPG, right? And you guys know we're doing things on that. My sort of running joke with the team, right, is that at the end of 2017, we want you, the players, to have a whole new list of things you're bitching about, right?
Oh, so we have to relearn our job, basically.
Yeah,
it's going to be a hard one.
Yeah.
So we have to rewrite all our standard replies and everything. But before we get too much into this, I think we have another interview queued up, a little video on the matchmaker and what we're planning to do. So why don't we switch over to that, and we will be right back, guys.
All right, cool.
Hi there, my name is Dmitry, and I'm at the helm of the World of Tanks team who are developing the new Matchmaker. In its current state, the World of Tanks Matchmaker isn't ideal. As a player, I notice these imperfections and sometimes they just overwhelm me. When I see my team and the opposing team, when I have 2 SPGs and the other team has none, or when I have a platoon with tier 6 tanks while the opponents boast 2 tier 8 platoons of skilled players. There can be a lot of cases like this that immediately make me not want to take part in a battle. Of course, we are aware of all the issues and disadvantages of the current matchmaker. About a half a year ago, we had the idea of creating a new matchmaker. We wanted an idea that could really work. We put together a set of requirements, limitations, and parameters that had to be observed in the new version of the matchmaker. The basic rule for the new matchmaker is that there should be fewer tanks at the top than in the middle or at the bottom of the list. We chose the 3-5-7 template as the best one. 3 players at the top of the list, 5 players in the middle, and 7 players at the bottom. We also had a perfect template for a 2-tier battle. 5 tanks at the top and 10 tanks in the middle of the list. Unfortunately, we can't always gather the perfect 3- and 2-tier teams in accordance to these templates. So the new matchmaker will support a pretty big number of acceptable templates. Moreover, the new matchmaker tracks the maps that players battle on during a given session and tries to minimize the chances of them getting the same maps again. One more important limitation is that now players can create 1-tier platoons. Also, the matchmaker now evaluates the platoon tier that is in the queue. If a player with 3 tier 8 vehicles has been formed, then the matchmaker will even it out with another team of 3 tier 8 vehicles. At present, it is a bit different. A tier 10 platoon can be matched against a tier 8 platoon. Bad times. The key advantage of the new matchmaker is that it is very flexible for various settings. We will continue working on it even after release. It's not like we can say, okay, it's ready. Now go play the way you want to. On the contrary, we want to get feedback from players and then analyze it and use it to improve and polish our new matchmaker.
Good.
And we are back.
Hey, all right, good. So I think it's great, that we've got the ability for with you guys. I want to really start. One of the things Milish and I talked about a lot, at the beginning of the year, we want to really start exposing the community more to the team and the guys who are actually doing, hands on the keyboard, right? The individual players, on our team, right? The guys who are doing that work. I think Dimitri did a really good job of explaining sort of where we're going with the matchmaker. If you look at what we were trying to accomplish, right? I mean, what are the things everybody would complain about? Number one, you'd get weird tier splits, sometimes, and especially, if you got a bunch of top tier, 12 top tier, and then, two guys who are in the medium, level tier, and then one poor fool at the bottom, it's like, oh, great, I'm the one tier N, tier 8 in a, in an otherwise almost all tier 10 battle. It's kind of a, it's a good time to go get a sandwich, right? Like you're not going to do a whole lot. And then, we've had weird things about classes, right? Here's 8 tank destroyers on one team and here's 6 heavies on the other. And, gee, matchmaker, why don't you even those out? Things like that, right? And then on top of that, the other one that's sort of non-obvious, that's a matchmaker related thing, actually is around map pooling. The sort of, hey, I played 8 matches and I've gotten Runeberg 3 times and then Winter Runeberg another 2, that kind of thing, right? So a lot of that is exactly the stuff that we were trying to do to fix up the matchmaker, right? To get away from that. And this idea of moving to this kind of template-based system, where you have a few heavies, or not heavies, a few, top tiers at the top of the chain, and then, more at the middle level, and then a lot at the lower level. It should help make that a more satisfying experience. Certainly we'll also cover the, the class issues. But, when you've got 7 low tiers swarming around what is the, the highest tier thing on the other side, even if it's 2 tiers above, it's not going to stand up to that kind of punishment, right? It's going to yield. And so that means that whether you're low, medium, or high, you're going to have with this setup, you're going to have a more satisfying time, right? If you're one of the 3 guys at the top, well, that's awesome. And, there's you're the lion in a field full of gazelles and it's good eating. But there's still enough of them, right, that they can overwhelm you and they have something to do, right? They have a purpose instead of just going, oh, all right, well, in 10 minutes, I'll have a fun experience, right? So getting away from that. And I think that really helps. Now, we are going to, though, right, Milish, we're going to, be very careful about balancing sort of the perfect match versus speed of match, right? Like, we don't want, it's Wednesday, it's 3 a.m., and you're spending, 15 minutes waiting for a match because we don't have the exact perfect one. And that's why we've got sort of a wide range of the templates. And the matchmaker it'll first try to put you into the perfect thing. But then, if it's going to take too long, then it'll loosen that up just a bit. It still won't be like the old days, but it'll loosen it up a bit to make sure you're in and playing.
Yeah, we want to really make sure that we are balancing the quality and together with the time. We do not want to happen to be in a moment when player has to wait 5 minutes. That's definitely not possible. So what we are doing is that we have multitude of templates from the ideal one from our perspective all the way to till even to the 1 plus minus 1 tier type of selections. So players, if they are actually in the time when players are actually not there, or like there's not enough in that specific tier, we will be able to play and operate with that. There is a lot of back and forth, and we are still tuning the perfect numbers. There's going to be a lot of testing behind it, and it's already actually happened a lot. At the same time, I think the one important part for me personally are the maps and the map rotation. We've done a lot of research on that side because I hate the situation when player comes to me is like, come on, man, you have like 3 maps. Why don't you add other ones? Well, to be fair, we have 40. But unfortunately, thanks to our map rotation, you might actually end up in the evening when it's like Himmelsdorf. I really want to take my LT Himmelsdorf. So like, okay, for heavy situation, perfect. But if you want to enjoy some LT scouting, Himmel is probably not the one that you are dreaming about. It's not your
ideal map.
No.
Well, and like Milish is saying, right? I mean, we really do. We have 40 plus maps in the game right now. That is more than most games of this sort have. I mean, a lot more than most games of this sort have. But when you're playing and all you're seeing is 5 of them, 6 of them, it doesn't feel like 40, and and so the value of it isn't there for the players, right? So it's really important to us to fix this stuff.
At the same time, there were, for example, small bugs that actually were hard to notice, but Winter Himmelsdorf and Normal Himmelsdorf were actually taking us to different maps.
Yep.
So small
so
issue.
It wasn't a family, right?
Small issue. So that's why actually player could be facing a lot of these kind of situations. So we are fixing all of these together with the matchmaker, and want to make sure that player will see more the maps rotating around, and will not see one and the other in the one evening.
And there's still randomness, right? So there will absolutely, in a game with where we have hundreds of thousands of matches going at any given moment, right? There will absolutely be times where you're going to see the same map, a few times, or not really. It's very unlikely that you'd see it, in a row like this anymore. But there will be times where, probability, you throw the dice often enough, and eventually weird things will happen, right? So it'll happen now and again. But this should change. It should substantially decrease the likelihood of this, because now at least the rule set is conscious of it, where before it wasn't.
And one thing that will definitely be still there is that the assault versus the traditional approach.
Yeah,
these are actually taken as two different maps. So player can actually, in certain cases, certain circumstances, seize these two after each other. But that will be basically the only possibility for you to see two maps after each other.
Yeah, and because not all maps are, play with all modes, right? Depending, if you're, especially if you've made certain choices, like I only want to play this type of thing, then you're going to see the maps that have that type of thing.
A little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay. Our next question was about lower tier tanks. So sometimes lower tier tanks are a little bit difficult for new players to sort of embrace and understand. And, you get into a tank and you get thrown into a game with higher tier tanks. So what are we doing to enhance sort of the lower tier gameplay for newer players?
Well, a lot. Honestly, I'll admit, like the first few matches that I played, I remember my own new player experience, and it was hard. It was brutal. You get in and you don't understand what's going on, and the tutorial is fairly thick. There's a lot to learn in a short period of time, and even the garage when we were first there, before we started doing a lot of the rehab we've been doing over the last year, it wasn't the most welcoming thing for new players, right? It was awesome for existing players because they had tons of freedom, right? There's everything there. But, when you're a new player, you need a little bit of a roadmap, right? You need some help sort of making your way around and learning things on a paced basis, right? To be able to get the level of detail and get the expertise going. I mean, there are certainly players that don't need that. Hardcore guys, they're just going to pick it up. But if you really want to be able to appeal to a lot of players and a lot of different types, you need to be able to handhold a little. So we've done, already, if you look, right, we've done a lot of things like the simplified tech characteristics, right? The purpose behind that was to make it really easy to see what kind of tank it is, right? Oh, it's got a lot of firepower. It doesn't have much armor. It's very mobile. I know how I should play it, because what a tank is good at isn't necessarily obvious from just looking at its shape, right? You don't look at it and go, oh, that's racy. Oh, that's a brawler, So that kind of thing helps. I think we've done a better job over time as we've brought in a lot of the best of mods and things like that of making the information more easily consumable for players. And we're working a lot actually on our new user experience. And, we hope that at some point when we ship out some of the changes we're making, there'll be that time that, that you as the hardcore player can look to your friends who maybe tried it once and weren't that into it, because they were intimidated, or new friends who have never tried it at all, where you can go, what, this is now ready for you, right? Like you could come in and play the game that I love. It's, it's now something you might be able to enjoy more. There's other stuff. I mean, we're changing some of the way that the low tiers thing work in terms of who it matches against. We do have protection in there now.
Yep.
Where if you're a new player and you've got, a certain number of battles or less, you're not going to face off against the dudes who are just, kind of dialing it down, right? The 30,000 battle dude who's just like, what the hell? I'll take out my tier 3.
Internally, we call it the sandpit. The place where the new players can actually come and play with each other. Of course, we are again trying to make sure that the experience is proper. So if you go really early in the morning or during the night, there's not so many new players, so you might actually get matched together with the others. But usually we are trying to match these players together to actually keep their experience amongst each other. And from one side for the new players, from the other side, even for the experienced players, it's not so much fun to actually compete with these.
Yeah, I mean, it can feel good for a minute, right? You're like, look at me, I got 8 kills. But, over time, you want to be able to play and...
Exactly.
Yeah, you want the challenge.
Okay, so we actually have a related question from one of the players. It's about low-tier light tanks. So the question is, how will these changes to light tanks and the matchmaking affect these guys? Can you maybe talk about that?
So we are actually balancing majority of the LTs. We are going basically through all of the tiers and looking into the tech tree and making sure that all of these are now actually matched together. For all of these, there will be the same matchmaker. So we are looking into the +-2. So no more +-3 or craziness like that, and not understanding like why this one is actually +-2, and then the next tier, wow, now it's actually +-2. Why did I do something wrong? No, you didn't. Yeah. Unfortunately, like it's actually us. So we are trying now to take care of all of these, and the guys are still balancing. There will be still lots of work on these. The guys are of course going always from the top all the way down, because you need to first take a look on what's on the top bar, and then start spreading it lower to make sure that you know how to continue basically from where to go low. So we'll be more and more looking into the early stages, and I think you will see more and more in the upcoming weeks.
Okay, cool. Now another player question that we had. This is one that we've also been receiving a lot over the past years. Is will we ever see a +1/-1 matchmaker? It's a classic, I know.
Yeah. No, as a full stop, all 10 tiers experience, that's not in the plans right now. I think, again, I'm inclined to believe, we'll see, right? But I'm inclined to believe that once we get to the point where we have this balance where it's very few top tier and a lot more of the medium and lower tier, that'll probably actually make this less of a howling need for a lot of players, because what's driving that is the fundamental feeling of frustration of, I'm on the bottom and I just can't do anything, right? That's what we need to fix. +1/-1 would be one way to do that, but the idea is fixing that feeling of helplessness, right, and purposelessness in a match. And I think we're going to address that at its fundamental issue. Now, at the lower tiers, though, it's a different thing, right?
On the lower tiers, it's a different thing, and we are still in discussion back and forth about, the tier 1 and 2 has actually +-1 already. And we are looking into the other tiers, like, do we want to spread this around? The opportunities are always there, and we are still a bit back and forth about where to get it. Like, are we going to stay actually there, or are we going to spread it a little bit to the upper tiers? Right now, we are actually settling down with the tier 1, tier 2. But hey, never say never, right?
Yeah. But again, the most important thing, right, is that we solve the underlying issue, right? Which is that there should never be a match where you come in and feel like you just can't do anything, where you just don't have any way to meaningfully interact with the battle. That's what we got to solve.
The one great thing actually with the new matchmaker is that it's pretty easy to tune it. We can actually play without live. We do not need to even do an update, nor server one, nor client one. We really can actually play with the numbers up until we see they are perfect. So there is a lots of opportunity for us to do some additional balancing as we go.
Cool. So let's go with another classic, I suppose. So why do we allow players with high battle counts to play against other new players? So
right.
Well, talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of just hit that, right? That to a certain level, until you're through a certain sort of minimum threshold of battles, we actually don't. There are guards in place already, actually, even today, that prevent that. Now, once you get past a certain set of battles, and we sort of turn you loose into the full world, yeah, I mean, you may face, and in some ways, this is kind of the beauty of random battles, right? Like, some days you're the most skilled player in the arena. Not for me, that doesn't happen very often, but maybe for you guys, right?
Sometimes.
On occasion.
Yeah, some days you are, some days you're not. You know, some days you're the lion, some days you're the gazelle, right? And the sort of the dynamic nature of that, the change of that means that every battle is going to feel different, right? And I think when we do the things that take away the matchmaker changes, that take away different, maybe sometimes being frustrating or stupid, right? You know, and with the changes that we're making now, that should really address that. You know, then we want to be in a position where players are playing against people of different skill levels, different experience, different quality. Because, you know, look, sometimes when you get really spanked by a dude who's been doing it for a long time, like, that's actually how you learn the best, right? And then you take those lessons and you go into the next battle and you turn around and you wallop the other guy who's thinking to himself, oh God, why do I have to face this guy? You know, and it's a fun part of the learning, right, for the game, for the players, you know, sort of gaining expertise, right, for the journey in the life cycle.
And come on, you don't have actually, like, I saw you in the Jagdpanzer E100 in your favorite tier 10, and
Yeah,
you were doing actually pretty well in there.
I'm getting better.
I know. Like, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, I want to take a quick moment to do a shout out for people in Facebook live chat. So if you haven't seen yet, I have a little iPad here. So I have actually been, when I've not been paying attention, we both have, we've been actually reading and watching your comments. So people have said that I smile too much and Zoltan doesn't smile enough. So we're going to have to work on that somehow. But I also wanted to give a shout out to one question in particular that I've seen from many people. We can take some more questions, I think, at the end of the topics we sort of want to talk about. But can you guys say anything about the recently introduced Object 252 and the Object 252U and the Defender version? So they've been quite a few comments in Facebook chat and on the forums that people find them overpowered.
Well, so I will say before we get into that part, you know, man, if the guys on the stream are going to start giving us beauty tips, and this is these four are the mugs they're going to do it with, like, we're going to be here all day, guys. You know? But yeah, Milos, you want to talk about this? I know, I mean, this is one you've actually been pretty, impassioned about.
So we watched this a lot. It's not only on the stream. Of course, we were getting that basically from the moment of releasing Defender, and even before on the super test, we were really following this up with the guys quite a bit. The Defender if you think about what a Defender is, it's basically it's an IS line type of a game. So definitely on tier 8, if you know how to play with the pike nose, if you really know your IS strategies, on tier 8, yes, the tank is actually quite strong, quite powerful, in the one-to-one mid-range situations, really strong to actually play against. On the other hand, if you think about it, this is not IS6 with preferable matchmaker. You are actually getting matched to the tier 10s, and when you actually get to the tier 10, it's completely different ballpark. Don't forget about the gun. The gun is the soft stats. It has a bloom, and you definitely cannot aim for the weak spots. Penetration somewhat okay. Pretty high alpha. I love that actually on the Russian tanks. Like when you hit, it actually hurts. But then say hi to the 16 seconds of waiting time.
Right.
That's not an easy one. So as soon as you actually get to situations, even on tier 8, when you start pushing too much and you don't know about these downfalls, man, you are gonna have a hard time. So if in the hands of really good player in tier 8, is the tank strong? Yep, pretty goddamn strong. I love my IS-3. I still think the IS-3 is actually stronger in these situations, especially because of the gun. And because of the reload, you actually can do a bit more. In the Defender, if you have your day and you really know what you are doing, yep, you will be definitely a really dangerous opponent in the tier 8. In the tier 9, yeah, somewhat. Tier 10, yeah, you are calling for your friends to actually give you some support. So, is there some situation like that with Defender? Well, I think if you are seeing really good and skilled players with Defender, I would definitely be careful. I would actually stay a little bit behind. But if you see one that's actually just rushing at you, have fun, guys. It's gonna be an easy one for you.
Okay, cool. Now I think it's time to move on to our next topic, which is the Sandbox. As you guys know, we've run the Sandbox server a couple of times now for different tests. Gone back to the drawing board, brought it back again. I'm going to talk a bit about that now. I'm going to actually just put in a little bit of a video loop in the background with some footage from the Sandbox. We're still going to be here, so don't worry. But can you guys tell us a little bit about the latest version of Sandbox, which has been running for a bit over a month now? How has it been so far?
Yeah, sure. Well, so let me start with, just really like, why do we do Sandbox in the first place, right? Again, when you look at the way that we've gotten sort of user acceptance testing in the past, right? The way we've made sure that what we're working on is something that people are going to feel really good about. Generally that's come in the form of super test and then common test. Those things come out, super test is about a month-ish, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, right? But before a patch ships out, right? Before we get our update out. And then common test is basically 2 weeks from, right? So it's a couple of weeks of super and then a couple of weeks of common, and then we're out. And that's good for getting, a good amount of broad feedback, the kind of stuff that you can't necessarily determine when it's just your internal QA team, right? When you need thousands and tens of thousands of players and battles kind of going all at once to be able to see certain things, right? Sometimes stuff just doesn't present itself until you have that level of scale. And the super test and common test strategy, it's okay for that, right? We get that stuff, but we get it too late to make really meaningful changes, right? Like, can you tune some things? Can you change a 3 to a 2, tune it up or down a little bit, more damage, less armor? Yeah, you can do that a little, but only so far, right? But for real deep, meaningful changes, right? If you're going to do something really adventurous and really shake it up, you can't, 4 weeks of feedback, that's not enough. By the time that happens, the dev team's sewing it all up, and they need to make sure it's all stable, right? So they can't make big changes because then stabilization goes to hell. So the Sandbox is a really important thing for us, not just for the couple of things we've been using it to test on so far, but just in general. It's a tool that we need as developers to be able to bring players into the experience much earlier, get their feedback, make them part owners of this process, right? And work with us so that we know, what's going on, and we can really be reactive to how they're thinking and feeling about stuff. That also means that we can be a lot more adventurous, right? Like, we can test things that may be a little bit crazy, and we did that with the first Sandbox. Some stuff that was like, this could be really cool, but it could really go haywire. There's no way I'm doing that on super test, right? On the way to a live production. But absolutely, let's try it, because, sometimes it's these really bold, adventurous things that lead to real breakthroughs. So that's why we have the Sandbox. And that's why we started doing things like the role stuff last year, or the, which involved some huge changes to tank balance that ultimately we said, it's too far, players don't feel good about this. And we scaled it back, right? We killed that because of that feedback. It was a great use of the Sandbox test. Then there were other things that we felt like, hey, there's some positive outcome out of this. Let's keep going, right? And so we went further with some of the things like dispersion circle stuff and pen fall off and the SPG changes. And then, and since then we've used, right, for things like lights and stuff like that, we've started building it out more. Now, so the current thing that's on there, right, that is not the be all end all for the Sandbox, but that is the current thing that we're testing. Really, like Miller said, first it was some stuff about where we are on the LTs, and now we've been deep in with the SPG rework. And we're getting a lot of feedback on that, and it's really good feedback. Frankly, it's really good because it's disparate, right? Like, we've got some people saying this is awesome, I love the stun, it's fantastic. We've got other people saying the stun's the worst thing in the world, and I hate you guys for ever even imagining it. Player feedback's widely variable, right? It always is. There's, we always say we got to listen to our players and do what they say, but that ignores the fact that they don't all say one thing, except about Matchmaker, right? And so, this is our opportunity to make a lot of changes and really be reactive. I think we feel pretty good about where things are going overall with the SPG, and then there's some things that we're still kind of tweaking on. You want to maybe give them some details about?
For sure. So first of all, like there was one really interesting question on the forum actually. Now I'm reading actually the live as well while the guys are talking. If we are actually even interacting in any way on the sandbox with the players. Of course, we are actually going there in our own. We have a specific team of guys who are actually filtering all the messages to us, just shooting us the information, going through it. But not only that, you can see me or on the other guys actually roaming around the Sandbox server and actually sending messages to players like, hey, what do you think? How are you feeling about stuff? We are trying to be active parts of the community because this is something for me personally that when we first time started talking about Sandbox, I remember my times 6 years ago when we were actually in the beta and alpha time, and it's like, wow, like that was a ride. Like it was great to be actually part of building the game, and I really would like to actually bring this feeling back because for me it was really important that I felt like, hey, I can shape somewhat the game, and I can talk with the developers, I can talk with the guys who can actually affect stuff. So we are trying to bring this this back to the game to give this option to players because for me personally it's actually important. Overall, the changes we are right now doing are actually going to the right direction. So we are looking into. We think that the damage of the artillery drop down, the numbers of RT. I know that lots of players are saying, hey, just 1 or just 2. We feel right now quite good with the 3, and we think that's in the area of interest. There is a lot of work still going on around the stun. We know that's a bit polarizing feature, as every single new feature is, because it will always be like that. We are looking into what is the right numbers. Is it actually something that is more polarizing on the one or the other side? So there's going to be still quite a bit of work on that. Otherwise, we think that the RT is now going to the right direction. With the LTs, we'll be working still on some of the tuning of the top ones. We know especially that the German and the Russian one will probably need a little bit more love and actually look into the stats to actually not make it too much of OP. There was a lot of feedback on that side. On the other hand, we had actually exactly the opposite problem with the Chinese. So we will actually look into these specific ones. And overall, I think there will be actually more and more things coming on Sandbox. On my part, it's important to say that Sandbox is not about rebalance. Sandbox is not only about the RT. Sandbox is the new thing where we're actually testing our stuff.
Yeah,
where
Sandbox is about getting the player involved.
Exactly, because let's be honest, like few weeks before the patch is out, well, we can tweak it a little, we can turn it off, but that's the only things we can do. But we really cannot actually do some major changes. And Sandbox is exactly the place where to go to do the changes.
Yeah. And the SPG stuff, like it's interesting. All the players, people who love SPGs, who play SPGs, kind of hate some things about SPGs, right? You sit there, boom, you miss, you wait 40 seconds or 6 hours, or 3 battles later you get another shot, and then maybe and you miss, and then eventually you nuke somebody, and it feels great when you finger of God down onto the battlefield, right? It feels really satisfying in that moment. But players who are arty players generally, are dissatisfied with a lot of the sort of the slow, the wait, the the imprecision, all that. And then obviously, people who are the on the other side, people who don't play arty, people who are sort of the victims. They hate it because, you're driving along, you're playing your game, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And, or you're trying to, as a heavy, you're trying to set a battle line or whatever. And then, with zero notice, zero hope to recover, suddenly, maybe you're, boom, and you're off the board. And so, the changes that we're making now, I think, make it better because, again, whether, whatever we do with stun, however that goes, what you're dealing with is something where the SPG is going to do some damage more reliably. You've got a bigger splash. You've got the ability to, to hit things, but you're not as likely to just nuke something anymore. And so now you've got a slightly more predictable set of gameplay, again, both for the guy who's playing it and for the guy on the other side of it. I think that makes it better overall. We'll see. Again, the community feedback continues to be everywhere on this, and we're going to continue tweaking and tuning this thing all the way home, right? All the way until the point where we launch that stuff out.
So I guess you guys mostly answered all of our questions. I have one question I would like to add, which is basically a bit different from what I had in mind first. But
okay,
let's just assume that these changes go to the live server, because we all know that the Sandbox is not supposed to be directly going to the live server, but who knows? So what kind of changes would you expect to happen in terms of gameplay? What would change in World of Tanks if these changes were introduced?
Well, so the first big thing, right, is obviously, the LT and SPG changes. We have to factor those not just individually, but collectively, right? So even as we go, okay, this is good, check, all right, good, this is good, check. Now we have to really test the hell out of those things together, right, and make sure those feel really good. I mean, in terms of where they go, whether they're likely to make drastic change in the overall game, I think, Milos, you talked about that a little bit earlier.
Yeah, we are really careful about exactly that. We are looking into the other tank types, heavies, DDs, mediums, to not actually get heavily affected by this. We definitely want the heavies to have a chance to actually really go forward and not be so far in line, not be so afraid of the RT. So it's actually not gonna just hammer of God down.
Yeah.
One of the reasons for us to actually, because of the stun, we started looking around the multi-use consumables, because we found out really quickly that the stun can be a bit annoying, and we wanted to actually counter it on a site by your possibility to actually use the consumable more often. To be fair, we found out that even if the stun is not a thing, the multi-use is actually interesting enough to probably stay, because it actually got a really strong push from players on. It's like, hey, this is really good thing.
Yeah.
Player has it's not then the fight between well, am I going to actually heal the driver, or am I actually going to heal my reload? Well, of course, there will be an element of it. It still actually keeps you 60 or 90 seconds.
Yeah,
waiting
there's
strategy
to it.
But there is a strategy to it. Exactly. What am I going to heal now, and what later on? Am I going to heal my T10 driver instead of my loader? Well, probably not, because the T10, come on, the driver life is actually not exceptionally high, but it will actually give you
the Spinal Tap drummer of World of Tanks.
Let's be honest, I wouldn't be the driver in that tank, that's for sure.
At least it's not the KV5 radio operator. Could always be worse.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that gave us quite a lot of insight. Do you know what the sort of future plans are for the Sandbox? Are you planning any more super crazy, even more crazy changes?
Yeah, well, so one of the things, and we'll talk about this a little bit too, when we get into some more about game modes. One of the things we don't have right now with World of Tanks is really an end game, right? You get to tier 10, and then you've got this awesome vehicle but it's like you own a Lamborghini now, right? Like, it's this awesome thing. It's super cool. It's great to drive. You feel great doing it. But boy, oh boy, oh boy, it's just sucking your credits out. It's a real punisher in the pocketbook. And there's not a reason for it, right? So you play it a little bit. You kind of, all right, I've built up enough. I'm going to have my fun. And then, you go off and you play something else, right? And, a lot of tier 8s and tier 8 premiums and whatever to, to get that cash back. But it's not an end game, right? That's not an end game. That's just, and so you don't have that utility that you want out of your tier 10s. So that's one of the things that we know we need to fix. And we're going to be building out a few different things, actually, to give players that end game experience, a reason to take their tier 10s out and use them and have a good time. You'll see coming up after this, right? You'll see some more examples of that. You'll see us start doing some things that are, gameplay modes and things like that that'll get towards that. There's beyond that, look, I think going forward, more and more you're going to see, as we do anything that's balance changes, as we do anything that's, if we go to big new lines, if we go to, a new class, if we go to, anything, like, you name it, right? Anything that's big, that's significant, where we really need months of information, and where it's going to take a long time to, to make sure that we get it absolutely right. That's the kind of stuff that'll be on Sandbox. So it'll be a standard part of the experience going forward.
Awesome. Let's go to player questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I interject one quick unplanned question for Facebook Live? Hopefully that's fine. But I've just seen so many people mention this, and I wanted to wait till the map segment at the end, but I think they're going to get impatient. Now, many players are asking if there's any chance we're going to get old maps that were removed. You know, I remember like many of the gems, like Dragon Ridge, beautiful map, loved playing on it. Can we have them back?
Yeah, Dragon Ridge. I think Dragon Ridge and Port seem to be sort of, neck and neck versus which thing players tell me first they want restored. So short answer, yes. We're gonna work on old maps, classic maps that people love, and we're gonna figure out ways to to bring these things back. We're also, obviously, it's very important for us to be building out new maps that make you not miss the old ones that we've taken away quite so much. Look, the question of which ones, when, all that, we're working through all that now, right? But we are looking at these things and trying to figure out what we can bring back and when. Obviously, in the short term, the biggest thing that's going on our map team, right, on our level building teams and the level art teams and all that, is doing all this work to get the cool new graphics stuff coming, right? Because there is no shortage of work to that, right? It's one thing to do all the engineering work, which is all done now, right, to make that work, and that's why people at WG Fest got to actually play Abby, right? It wasn't just a video; people were actually hands on the, on the keyboard, right, playing. And you'll see when we show the video about graphics, we've got more maps going. But that's a ton of work on the part of those teams to get it there. But beyond that, I think if you look at what happened for the 100 Years of Tanks, right? The Mark I mode. I think that map was really cool. It was really interesting. It was less, I guess, literal. It was a more creative use of things on the battlefield. Driving through the Zeppelin, all that kind of stuff. It made for a more interesting map, and I think that's a sign of kind of the growth that the map building teams have been experiencing, to be able to push the boundaries a little bit more and do things that are going to be more memorable like that. So again, we'll balance between sort of, let's refurb old maps, let's bring fan favorites back in, let's get new maps that can become the new fan favorites, which then we will take away and have people hate. Just kidding.
Of course.
That's exactly what I'm always telling my guys. That's the goal.
Yeah. No, but so we'll have a balance of each of those things, right? So it's getting the maps to super high visual quality like we need. It's getting old maps up to the speed and up to the quality and up to the the balance bar and the visual bar and the design bar that we want. And then giving you guys new maps that you can feel really good about, that can become the new favorites, right?
Yeah, it's really important for us. And right now we're actually working on new tools for us, and we actually start looking more into the heat maps. Did a lots of the background work on. One thing that our lead creative producer Andrzej Bilecki is always saying is the first thing you need to find out is actually what you should not do. What are the bad things? If you think about Bible, that's exactly what it's saying. You don't do these things. And so right now we are working on the level design Bible. Basically, what are the things that are making our players mad? What are the things that are actually making our maps bad, and makes actually the experience not to be great. The heat maps will help a lot for us to be actually able to get more and more data from the real servers and get not only the feedback from players, that's really important, but at the same time, okay, so players are saying this map is actually bad. What are the reasons behind it? And then actually digging down, looking into that, and fixing the specific issues that we can see way more, instead of just actually playing the map. That's what was actually done mostly before.
And we've done a ton of that work, over the last year plus. I mean, a lot of the players, right, people probably watching this stream have been part of these various surveys, right? Which maps do you like? Which ones do you not like? All that. And, we've taken that data, and it's not just like, oh, okay, they don't like this one. Well, let's not do that. They don't like this one. Let's kill that. It's, okay, they like this map, this map, this map, this map. They don't like this one, this one, this one, this one. What are the common factors, right? What are the common threads that tend to exist in maps that are in the less favored? What are the ones that are in the more favored? And so, as an example, we've certainly seen that, the maps people tend to gravitate towards the best are ones where there's a relatively predictable sort of place or places for the battle. A couple spots on the, on the map that are, kind of where the action is, right? And and you're, even as I say it, right, I can see you're thinking about it like, yeah, oh yeah, like this one, right? Like, where do I, okay, when I'm playing mines, where do I fight, right? That kind of stuff, versus ones where it was more chaotic. Like there's the feeling like you're getting set up and you're trying to get yourself positioned so that you can interact with the battle because you know where it's going to be, and then suddenly you just kind of get randomly shot in the ass. That's frustrating, right? That it's too chaotic, right? So that's an example of one of the things that the guys have really taken to heart in the way that they're building out new maps. Trying to make sure, right? Obviously, one of the big things from the from sort of probably a couple of years ago, there were a lot of very cramped, tight corridory maps, and the guys with the more mobile vehicles
it's
were like, this is frustrating, right? You want to have a map that's got versatility, where a lot of different players can interact with it, where every class can at least have some way to play it, right? Not to be the Artie on Himmelsdorf or whatever, right? Which I know all the anti-Artie crowd is like, good, more of those. Die, Artie. But you want, if it's a class, and it is a class in the game, right, there should be a way for it to interact reasonably with that map. Now, that doesn't mean that all maps should feel the same, right? Some maps should gravitate towards a certain type and be harder for a certain type, but not to the point where it's just, oh, there's no way to play this, right? So a lot of stuff like that, are examples of sort of the lessons the guys have been bringing to the table.
Yep.
One of the interesting things is actually, Milos, he doesn't talk about this publicly a lot, but your background was in level design, right? In the sort of the dark old days before you became a production dude.
Well, so most of the people are saying it the opposite way. Like in the bright days before you get completely mad and actually decided like, yeah, creative sucks. I will go production. I was actually a level designer on a few games, single player games though. We are working with the guys really hard on that, and it's actually great to see the amount of effort the guys are actually doing into this one. So trying to help a little, but there's a reason why I'm producer now.
Maybe I can actually interject one more question, which is related to maps. So a lot of people in the chat are asking whether we are considering bringing night maps into the game. Can you maybe tell me something about that?
Saw the question.
Yeah, so night and visibility stuff and weather and things like that. The minute I say weather, Milos goes,
going again. He is going again.
Look, it's not stuff that we're doing anytime imminently, right? Because again, there's a lot of work, right, going into the visual effort stuff and honestly, I'm super excited about where this is all going, right? I think the work the guys are doing is phenomenal. I think the engineering team's done a great job. I think that, the great thing is they've turned over all these really cool tools now to the level artists. And now they're just going haywire. They're going bonkers on this stuff, and it looks really good. But
really good.
And I hope everybody who sees it, right, should hopefully feels the same way. But then beyond that, the good thing is it's not like we just go, okay, got it, done, pencils down, right? After that, after we ship that out, then we get to go to like, okay, what's the next cool thing we can bring in? And certainly, things like weather, things like night, when so much of the game is around spotting or visibility, right? And then around the penetration system. That's kind of the core of World of Tanks. And so when you do things like night or weather, things that can kind of mess around with the spotting set, it can create an interesting wrinkle for play. That's certainly the kind of thing that would take a lot of sandbox testing, among other things,
a little bit,
to make sure we get right. But it's something I think that we're excited about the ideas, but that's not on the anytime soon list right now.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Now we have some more player questions. We kind of got sidetracked here with the whole map issue, and we're going to go touch on maps and graphics again afterwards. But we've had a lot of players asking why the percentage of RNG in the game is so high in terms of damage and in terms of especially penetration.
25%.
Yep.
All the favorite questions today.
Yeah.
It's like you are really going hard on us.
It's good. Look, that's why we're here, man. Honestly, the players, again, hitting the unholy trinity, talking about what we're doing with that, right? Hitting these old things. whether it's yes or no, like, players want to be able to get these questions answered, and we owe that to them, right? And hopefully, as we explain, if it's yes, hey, great, they're excited. And if it's no, if they at least understand the rationale behind it, or if they see what we're doing differently to try to accomplish the same goal, then hopefully that helps kind of, decrease the frustration, right? So, no, we're good. Ask us your questions.
Yes. So on the RNG side, not to actually sideline, because it almost looked like we were trying to escape.
No,
right? So on the RNG side, so the RNG is usually 25%. To be fair, in most of the cases, it's roughly 10, because if you would really roll on 25, you need to have a luck, or the opposite in case that you actually roll the minus. The RNG has its space in the game. It actually makes it, not always the same. It will actually vary it through the vehicles. It will give you a bit different situations and different cases as you play through the game. And I actually still think it's fairly important to the game. The question about, are we ever going to decrease it? Are we ever going to touch it? Well, again, like I hate to say something like never. Right now, it's not something that we are actually looking into that.
Yeah.
We need to, again, unholy trinity, we will fix these three. Might be that the next one will be actually RNG, and we will need to take a look what is there.
Yeah, and I think, it's important, right? Like, you want to balance carefully, in a game, right, between, it's chess versus dice, right? Like, if it's all absolutely 100% zero RNG, 100% predictable, and it's pure sim, then at that point, then you want something that's only the highest of the teeny itty bittiest of the highest skilled players to absolutely win every battle. That's the best way there is to do it, right? And so, and frankly, not to get too, philosophical, but life ain't like that either, right? Crap happens. So there is some level of randomness, no matter how good your plan is, no matter how, well set up it is. At some point, you're lining up your shot, and then there's wind, or there's a fucking bird that gets in the way, or what, things happen.
They happen, they do.
Exactly.
And so, RNG sort of simulates, it's kind of the catch-all for, weird crap, right, that goes on. And so it has its purpose. In any game, it has its purpose. Is it too much? Is it too little? I think there's a lot of people who debate it either way. But so far, remember that it's not just a function of that. That is one thing inside of a long calculus of other factors, right, that go into it. And so the balance team does their balance with that in mind, right, with that being built into the game in mind. And so, that, like, to take that one out and go, well, but we should change that. Well, then we'd have to change everything else, along the way in order to get to the balance we want, right? Like, you can't just sort of take one variable out without thinking about its purpose in the whole chain. So I think that's why, right now it's not really on the list, and we'll see. Maybe, the design guys are smart guys. They think about this all the time. They're super critical, self-critical about it. Even if in the past we didn't do a great job of maybe explaining these kinds of things to our players, they really are incredibly self-critical, and they're constantly reevaluating these kinds of things. So not right now, but I think for good reasons that around why it is that they've built it that way.
Fair enough. So you guys are so used to hard questions, so here comes another one. So we did all of these changes to Arty on Sandbox. We have been testing them. Why didn't we just remove it from the game?
One of the top ones.
Yeah.
Classic.
Well, complicated answer, right? I mean, look, for one thing, a simple part of the answer is because for every one guy saying that, there's another guy on the other side going, no, what you need to remove from the game is people who don't like Arty, right? Like, there's wildly different views about that, right? Yep. I think everybody realizes that Arty needs changes, but there are still Arty's defenders out there too, right? And it does have a role in the game, right?
It does, and I definitely agree that RT needs fixing. Like there are problems. We all know that. If you would be saying no, everything is fine. We love one-shotting and like waiting for 37 minutes to actually get to something down. That's not exactly where we want to be. Like we need to fix that. But at the same time, like taking it completely away. Well, if you take a look on some of the forums, like as you said, like maybe it's not one-to-one, but there is a lot of voices saying like no, like please do not touch the RTs. They are fine. So there are actually players there who actually enjoys this type of gameplay, and RT has a role in the game. It's really important to digging out the heavies from positions.
It's the same as a first-person shooter, a grenade, right?
Exactly.
Like you need to have something that prevents people from being just dig in, right, and just sit and wait and have their one spot, and there's nothing you can do, right? I mean, if you've got a heavy that's properly positioned, sitting right in a corner, and there's no arty in the game, like forget it, it's game over, right? So at that point, like you grab your mouse, you go to the right corner of Himmelsdorf, and you just go, okay, I've already won. We're just waiting for how I win, right? So arty serves that function. It's just that right now, actually, well, it's intended to serve that function. It's just right now, it's so good at its job that it actually has the reverse effect, right? It actually punishes people for moving out, right? And for getting out from behind cover. That's what we need to fix. But the right way to fix that isn't to then replace that with another problem that is then just people being able to dig and burrow and just go hull down and be done.
Okay. You guys up for one more nasty question, unprepared from chat?
Go.
Absolutely.
Shoot over.
I'm almost try speaking German again after this, I think.
I'll offer some free coaching, don't worry. Okay, so this is another question I think that's been thrown around a lot. It's about mods, and specifically about XVM. And about the calls for XVM to be removed from game. Some people think it's a good idea, some people don't. What's your take on it?
You want to go first? I think we have slightly different views.
Yeah, so it's actually funny because right now you have actually in the studio guys exactly the same problem as you have on a forum, when actually one will be way more pro and the other one will be way more negative about it. So personally, am I using the XVM? Yep, I think it's XVM right now is basically helping us with the meta game. Like as we do not have actually like really strong meta, we do not have end game. We do not have anything that, hey, I researched my mouse that I was dreaming about for the years. Now, what next? XVM is basically a substitution for many players in that way. And that's why I think that part of XVM is good. Are there problems with XVM? For sure. I hate XVM when I'm playing LTs because my win rate is dropping down. No matter what I'm doing, if I'm actually not just dealing damage and killing tanks, if I'm actually trying to do my job of lighting up, 250. By the way, I actually spotted 5k damage, but still 250 on the win rate side. Is that good? No, that's definitely
it doesn't necessarily encourage you to actually do things that are good for winning the match.
Exactly.
And so it may be encouraging behaviors in players that aren't actually the right behaviors.
And I think for some of the things, the behaviors could be even right. For some of the things, the behaviors are actually wrong. And that's something that's actually the downfall of XVM. At the same time, it gives you, like, I really dislike the idea of like going there and spamming to everyone, tomato, or like a focus firing on the purple guy. I don't think that's good. I don't think that's exactly where we would like to go. It's quite annoying for both actually the guys on both spectrums. But overall, I think XVM is, from my perspective, is actually a sign of something that we are missing on our side, and we need to actually be better at.
Yeah, and I think Milos totally hit it. I mean, that's the biggest issue, right? Is that, for better, for worse, that's the thing, right? When you've got, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 battles, 180,000 battles, even though it's terrible for this in a way, right? Because at that level of battles, you're not making a dent in your global rating, right? Or your win rate for that matter. But but for better or for worse, that's for right now, that's the end game for a lot of players. That's the thing that they are chasing, right? I mean, tons of players are just, it's all about their win rate and all about their win rate, and they're trying to perfect that, right? To chase that up. And so it's on us to give the players something else to care about, right? Something else to do that. And if we just took that away right now without having something else in there, I think we'd be doing a disservice to that, to those players, because then suddenly it's like, well, what am I doing here? But I think, all the things that Miller's talked about, all of the issues and risks and concerns are legit. I think that, the fact that it doesn't always incentivize you to do the right thing in the battle isn't good. I think the win rate predictor in particular is frequently, we've seen the data, it is frequently wildly off. It's not necessarily a good win predictor. And so, you get people on and they go, oh God, you just put me in a match where I've got a 27% win rate. Well, you don't. Your matchmaker sucks. Well, it does, but that's not evidence. That's fact, right? So it's, there's issues, and there's certainly things that we need to do. But I think we owe the players some homework on the other side before we could have a deeper conversation about something like that, right? Just to be able to replace the things that it does serve, because not everything that it does is bad.
No, not at all, not at all. And hey, like if you were asking me, am I using XVM? Well, I'm not the mod, because I'm playing on multiple machines and I'm trying to play vanilla and to have the experience of the real player without the mods. And I've been using it before. Yep, I did actually. And I'm actually checking my stats on multiple pages, looking into my win rate. And yeah, as you said, like I actually started as quite low stat player, and it actually takes ages for me to now get from the dig down. I have 1300s, and I'm still going for my green color. So actually, I'm not the yellow one. But yeah, I think we need to actually spend some more time on that one and see where to take it from there.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys. I feel your pain. I had my first 1,000 battles on a laptop that didn't even meet minimum specs and overheated and turned itself off in game, and it took me quite a while to get out of that slump.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Okay, guys, let's go to a different topic, which is somewhat related, I guess. We heard some rumors that you are working on a different game mode. It's ranked battles. So can about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good transition in a way, actually. So ranked battles is absolutely one of the things that we're really excited about, and actually is part, not all of, but part of what we're looking at as an end game for tanks. It'll be it's a tier 10 experience, and look, there are always calls whenever we talk about matchmaker. There's also always somebody out there who says you should have skill-based matchmaking, which actually for random battles we don't actually think is a good idea, because again, you want the randomness, you want that opportunity to sometimes be the good one, sometimes the bad one. If it's always kind of elo'd out, then you're always just sort of in an even match, and that's fairly predictable then over time. But the goal of it, right, the desire to be able to say, look, I want to go metal to metal, right, steel to steel, and put my skill to the test against other players and prove that I'm the best of the best. Like that's a wonderful, noble goal, and we need to have a place for that, right? And so ranked battles will do that. You gain experience, right? You as you're playing in a ranked battles ladder, you'll if you're successful, you go up in rank. If you're unsuccessful, you're kind of you'll stay down in the lower ranks. And so over time, as you get up into the higher ranks, into the stratosphere, like that's where it's just lions and lions, and that's where you're going to have your ability to really, to prove up, right, that you're the guy, right, that you're the best of the best, and so I think it's going to be really great for that, for the people who are really, hardcore competitors and are the mastery level kind of players. This is going to be a great experience for them.
Yeah, I think on our side, we are serving quite well the request for more competitive on the side of clans, on the side of the social players. But for players who are more of the lone wolves, and to be fair, I'm actually one of them. I'd rather to play actually for me or with my platoon. I think like we were not serving that area much, and actually it really ties back to the XVM and the discussion about win rate. That's exactly why I'm actually going for the win rate, because that's the only thing.
Because that's how you prove right now that you're the best.
And I can compare like your stats and my stats. I'm better guy. Yeah. I think the ranked battles is exactly the place for this type of players.
Because it's one thing to be like, hey, I have a bigger number. It's another thing to go, I shot and killed you, right? I'm at a higher rank, damn it. that's a better, more satisfying way to to compare,
Exactly.
right? Toe to toe.
Looking forward to being with you in the battle.
Oh, I don't think you and I are going to be in the same ranks a lot, man.
Let's see.
I think you're probably likely to end up here, and I'll be.
You might surprise.
Actually, we should talk about that, kind of how that works, right? It's not all about just winning the battle. It's actually about your performance, right? So if you're a winner, right? If you're on the winning side of a ranked battle, and that's 15 on 15, but it's 15 on 15 tier 10s only. If you're in the top 12 of the winning side, you'll increment up, right? You'll rank up. You'll be further along the rank ladder. If you're in the bottom 3 of a winning team, we're not going to punish you, right? We're not going to penalize you when you're on the winning team, but you're not going to rank up for that, because let's face it, it wasn't really down to you that battle got carried, right? But on the other side, on the losing team, if you're in the top 3 of the losing team, you're still going to be, that's still deemed a success. You're still going to be incrementing up, ranking up on the rank ladder, because that was you doing a great job, right? Even though maybe it didn't break the right way for the, across the rest of the team, but you still should be rewarded, right? So it's not just wins and losses, it's actually your performance in the match that determines it. And that's what we want, because at the highest level, it shouldn't be just the guys who happen to get, a good round of luck and wins. It should be the guys who are the best players at the top, competing for the coolest stuff, right? And then if you're in the bottom 12 of the losing team, then you'll lose a little bit of progress, so that it's a little harder to get up that rank.
Okay, to be honest, I think it sounds exciting. It looks like the kind of game mode that I'd be up for.
Yeah, same.
Not having any time in the evenings to shout on TeamSpeak at people for not being fast enough to get someone spotted or something. So
Sure.
the big question now, of course, on everyone's mind, the one that you probably least like to answer, is when.
Right. So
Always.
yeah. So and look, we've talked about this before, right? We don't want to call something out for a date that we can't 100% reliably commit to, right? We're not in the business of missing player expectations and breaking promises anymore. I know that's maybe the way that things were, and that's the reputation maybe that we had with the community, that World of Tanks had, but we're out of that business. So this is not coming as soon as the lights and the matchmaking changes and all that, but it's not too far off on the horizon. It's been getting we've been putting it through its paces now, and we do feel comfortable that this is something that we're going to ship in a relatively decent time frame, but we've got these other things that we're going to get done first.
Yeah, there are priorities on our side for sure, and we need to handle it in the right order.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this something we can expect to see hit Sandbox before it hits Super and public test?
Because of what we need to test on it, it's not really gameplay functionality. It's a lot of UI stuff and rewards shit and things, things like that.
I can already say most likely no.
Yeah.
This is actually not something that's easily testable. This is more of the live product.
Well, it's the type of testing, right? It doesn't need the scale testing that Sandbox affords. It needs a lot of QA testing, right? It needs a lot of exception handling testing and stuff like that.
Let's be honest, when we are going, for example, with the first version, with the first season, because as Stan was saying, it will be actually broken down to season and so on. The first season is definitely going to be sort of an alpha, like the first season from all, and we will be actually testing a lot of stuff there. So there will be a lots of iterations behind it, but the first iteration will definitely happen directly on the production server.
But this is something, even though it's early, we wanted to kind of start telling players about it a little bit now, because it shouldn't, again, we're trying to be very careful about making sure that we only tell you guys things that we are 100% committed, that we know are going to happen. But we also don't want to only tell you about oh, here's what's coming very, very shortly. We've got a long roadmap for these things. We've got a long list of things we want to do to keep making tanks great for a long time. And so we want to balance. We want to tell you about cool stuff that we're excited about, that we're working on, but the balance is we're trying to make sure that we don't tell you about just hopes and dreams and pie in the sky stuff. We're telling you about things that we're actually going to do. And, so some of it's coming sooner, some of it's coming later. And we want you guys, as players, we want you to know both.
Okay, let's move on to a topic that I think a lot of players are waiting for, which is graphics improvements.
Excellent.
So, we have been teasing these. Maybe can you guys talk a bit more about them?
So you could actually see stuff on the VG Fest. Players actually could even play it in there. I remember when we were showing it first time actually on the video. We basically first showed the video from it, and then everyone like the first question was like, "Yeah, but like this is just a video.
Oh, God,
you are never gonna actually show this. This
It's
class
just
in
a
the
video. It's not real. No,
Well,
no.
And
You can play it.
Exactly. We followed up immediately, like, hey, so in the booth there are actually few machines that you can actually take your hands on.
And they're, oh.
Was a bit of a surprise for the people. So we continue working on it. You probably saw some short clip on the Facebook a few days ago. We will be actually now showing some more maps. The work definitely continues. We are more and more digging into the stuff, testing stuff, making sure that the maps are reworked, but still actually keeping the gameplay from the previous maps. We do not want to actually destroy that, and for people who like mines to be actually able to play in mines and so on. So the work continues on that front.
Yep. And it's the good thing is, right, again, in December we came to Moscow, we showed off one map, right, Abbey, with that, with the rework, right, and it looked really good. And I think the nice thing was, the players who actually got a chance to play it there on site, their feedback was really positive. They saw it, they enjoyed it. Now of course, as Miller said, the first sort of the really grumpy comments, right? There were some guys that were like, but that's just a video. It's not real. No, it's real. Here, play it. And then the next thing, of course, was, well, yeah, but you're never going to ship any of that. It'll take you 7 years. You're not. So that's why we wanted to show right now, right? The work is continuing, and we've got a couple more maps that have gotten the treatment that are ready to show off. It is not a short amount of work. It is a massive amount of work. We've got a ton of resources in the studio that are doing this stuff right now. But this is what World of Tanks is going to be. This is what it is going to look like in a relatively short period of time, and not just here's a map. And then 6 months later, here's 2 more maps, and then 6 years from now, here's another map. No. Like, this is what we're doing. This is the new World of Tanks. This is what it's gonna look like going forward.
Yeah. So I think we've teased enough now. We probably need to play the video before people
let it go.
Riot. But can I just say one more thing for everyone watching, for all of us? This is the moment we take back what the console players have taken from us. We take back the prize for most beautiful game. Check it out and enjoy. We'll be right back.
Be awesome.
So there was a really interesting question actually from one like it was actually more than one. So like, are these maps bigger? Actually, thank you for asking. They are not. They seem bigger. It was actually my first feedback to the guys when actually I dropped on mine as well. The reason for feeling the bigger is actually the outland that we completely reworked. So previously the outland was really cluttered. It had to be always really close, and the rest was yeah. Right now, what we are doing is that the outland is like really going around. There's a huge space. It's actually even bigger occasionally than the map itself. So that actually gives you the feeling of actually size and feeling like the world is not the cube of 1,000 to 1,000. There is nothing behind it. This actually gives you the feeling of like this is a living world.
Yeah. So your gameplay strategies that you knew and loved, they're still going to work there. It's just that now it's going to feel much more like a real place inside of a broader world. Right, and obviously, hopefully look a lot more realistic as well.
I now know that there was a lot of questions on the side of performance, and like how is this going to affect performance? Does it mean that my machine is not going to be good enough? For low and minimal spec, we definitely do not want to do anything. And like the players who are now enjoying the game on the main specs, they will still keep continuing that. On the higher specs, though, of course, if you want to see all of this, we will, of course, need to buff a little bit your machines as we do with our tanks and go a little bit higher. But definitely, if you were able to enjoy the game before on the min spec, you will actually enjoy it now as well.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean that we will be dropping some.
Yeah, you don't have to go buy a new supercomputer just to be able to run this. No. Yep.
Okay, so let's move on to questions from the players. I have one question which is related to ranked battles, I guess, because do you guys have any doubts about maybe spreading the player base too thin while introducing new modes? Is that a problem?
Yeah, that is absolutely something we think about all the time. And ranked, we don't anticipate that ranked will be sort of available 24/7, like Thursday, 4 a.m, I don't think you're going to be able to play ranked battles, because then not only does it start to cut up the player base, right, and you get into matchmaking issues, but it also then would be prone to rigging and, basically cheating, right, stuff like that we don't want to have. So it'll be something that we say, okay, now it's this time, right, ranked battles is open, come in, secure your place on the rank ladder, and then, and then off we go. So it's, we don't want to be in a position where we are, where we're cutting away, right, and hurting the player base. Absolutely, it's something we think about all the time.
Yep.
Okay. Then I think we have one more question from the ones. Is there any way you can talk about any time frame for what we've just seen in terms of nice glory
of the graphics?
Of the graphics, yes.
So we're not ready to call a date on it yet, right? We're not announcing a date on it. But again, what I think we can very comfortably tell the community is that that this is all stuff that's happening. We're working on all this right now. We've got a ton of maps that are in this, and we are. And when we do this, you're going to get the maps, and this will be what the game looks like. It's not going to be just that we lob out a test one here and there. You're going to get this as the game. So, okay. And I'd say, soon-ish.
TM.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Are you guys up for taking a few more questions from Facebook live chat before we sign off for the evening?
We are yours for the taking, man.
Yeah. Okay. Question here, for instance, from Richard, who wants to know if we have plans for bigger maps.
I saw that question there.
Yeah. We don't have anything that we are ready to talk about at this moment.
He's trying to be really diplomatic.
But it is certainly stuff that we've talked about internally a lot, and Richard, stay tuned.
Yeah, I would definitely stay tuned for the upcoming weeks.
Yeah.
So another question about similar issues. So are there any new lines, maybe, or anything that's coming to the game, new content that you guys might disclose here? Because, there are a lot of specific questions about specific nations, but maybe in general.
Yep. So are there new ones coming? Yes. Are we ready to disclose them yet? No.
Okay, that's what I figured.
As we said in VG Fest, we really want to actually talk about these actually when it's coming closer.
Yeah.
We are looking into new things. We are looking into even new type of gameplay. We just don't want to do copies of the existing T54. I think we have enough of that. We are looking into how to actually improve, how to move forward. So I think the Swedish line was a good example where we actually tried some experiments with the STRV, and we definitely continue in a similar trajectory.
Yeah, it's really important for us that new tanks, they're not just another of the whatevers. They have some reason to exist, right? Mm-hmm. Some reason you'd want to choose that tool out of your toolbox rather than another one.
Okay. Another good question, I think, for the topic we just talked about from Sean is what graphics engine are we going to be using for these new maps? And is this going to increase our multi-core CPU support and maybe even multi-GPU support?
So on the engine, so internally we call it the Core 5.0. It's actually internal engine. Yeah. The guys actually did all of this work together in Minsk with cooperation with the Sydney guys, the Big War team. There was lots of work done on that behind. On the multi-core and multi-GPU, not ready to answer the question yet. There is not we need to actually comply with lots of different specs, and so all of the work is always going into both ways. Like, hey, we need to make something awesome, but at the same time, we are trying to keep in mind the players without actually the awesome machines. So I think not right now for what you've seen, but we definitely keep looking around and looking into the new trends.
Okay, this is another really popular question I've seen a couple of times in chat throughout the stream. Lastly, from Christian, what about female crew voices for our female crews?
Yes. That's something that we're working on to be able to fix.
We can. I think we can say here that it's definitely something we are taking care.
We're looking forward to the time when we can move away from our husky-voiced female crew members.
It's beautiful. Come on.
Okay. Guys, as much as I would love to go through Facebook chat all day and take more questions, unfortunately, it's turning into 8 p.m. on a Friday evening here in Paris. For you guys, have you had breakfast yet? Or is it...
ish.
Somewhat.
Yeah, remember the guys are tuning in from San Francisco, so it's very early, and here it's getting to be very late. So I think it's going to be time for us to say goodbye. I want to say thank you for everyone that tuned in, for everyone that pushed the like or the share button, for everyone that commented. And I really hope that you enjoyed some of the things that the guys were able to share. And I think rest assured that we are working on providing more of this kind of live content in the future going forward. Yeah. You've already seen us, I think, go live quite a lot recently, and it's just definitely something we're going to still expand on in the future.
Yeah, and thanks you guys for having us. Milos and I will be heading back to the other side of the world, pretty shortly here, and we'll be able to get on with the work. But it's really great. Honestly, it's a great opportunity for us to be able to to hear very, very directly, actually, from our players about how things are going, and we're really excited about the work that we're doing, and we're glad to have the chance to share it with you guys.
And I love the fact that we can actually directly answer the tough questions that all of you guys were actually posting at us. More and more, please, more and more.
Yep. Oh, we're happy to collect them for you, no problem.
Perfect.
Okay, so remember, guys, if you missed any part of the interview previously, if you want to share some information that we talked about with your friends or anything, you can find all of the information, I think, on the World of Tanks portal. This whole segment will be available as a VOD on our Facebook page, albeit, unfortunately, in rather low quality soon. And we might even upload the entire thing to YouTube if they'll let us do a 2-hour video. We'll have to see. But yeah, thank you very much to Thane and Milos for coming out.
Guys.
And
thank you very much.
Look forward to buying you a beer when you come visit us in Paris.
Thank you.
Awesome. See you on the battlefield, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so I guess we don't really have much to talk about anymore either, right?
This was actually, I think, really informative, really awesome.
Yeah.
I personally heard them.
Yeah.
So
I really enjoyed it. Well, without further ado, we're going to say goodbye. Thank you very much, Facebook, and we'll see you next time.
see you guys.